let's stay with COP27 and now come to the water climate discussion. This year, the water climate discussion received 2.5 hours of good news videos from 33 water sector contributors. Our friends at Andy distilled the very best bits to fit into a 1-hour live show with 3 live presenters. One of the presenters was our very own Joe Burgess, who stayed on for the full Q&A. I asked Martin to further boil it down to an 8-minute taster. If you haven't watched the recording yet, I'd thoroughly recommend that you head to isle.andi.com/WCD for Water Climate Discussion 2022, where you can watch everything. And if, like me, you did take part on the day, I'm sure you'll appreciate this little reminder.
Welcome to the Water Climate Discussion. Peter Lefort, an expert in positive tipping points from the University of Exeter's Green Futures Network, is joining us live. We also should have Joe Burgess. Joe, how are you doing?
Good, thank you very much, Martin. Really glad to be here.
Brilliant. Today we're going to be discussing positive tipping points in the water sector. As a tipping point is when a series of small things become significant enough to cause a larger, more important change. But there's an upside. Things can also tip in a positive direction, like an LED light bulb moment. We start off with an innovator who does something new. Whatever climate initiative you're working on, implementing or considering, sharing it is one critically important step in its becoming a positive tipping point. And that's exactly why we're here today, to share good ideas.
It can feel like change is very, very slow, like nothing is happening. And then it can happen all of a sudden. So as the curve suddenly goes upwards, right? And so it's not just that moment of innovation, that trigger that leads to systemic change. It's making sure that everything that needs to be in place for that trigger to take off is already there. And that's something we can talk about in a bit more detail when we hear some of the stories from the videos.
Egypt's goals for COP27 are mitigation, adaptation, finance and collaboration. So that is exactly how we're going to structure this water climate discussion.
We've identified and delivered upon opportunities to use available space on our sites to deliver more solar power.
We've now got our largest water treatment works able to run on a solar farm.
It's momentum that's carrying solar forward rather than trying to push against resistance.
We're also reducing energy consumption through deployment of new technology, delivering a portfolio of more efficient blowers, pumps, variable speed drives, heating and lighting controls across our asset base. We're also expanding the use of real-time control at wastewater treatment works and exploring the use of new software to optimise water distribution networks and improve leakage.
On a hydrogen and oxygen demonstrator project, and basically what that involves is having an electrolyzer that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. Then all being well, we can use the oxygen in our wastewater treatment process.
We're on target to achieve net zero carbon in 2025. From that point, we'll surrender our excess carbon credits to go beyond zero carbon and start addressing our legacy emissions. This will be achieved with our 2 food waste to energy facilities. We also have many solar projects, and we started our leap into green hydrogen, which we are currently trialling.
Yorkshire Water is a success story of a new technology being implemented in a water utility in the UK. They needed to lower the volume of sludge that they had to transport by road after treatment at a sewage treatment works.
All of our big water recycling centres now, the waste heat is now useful heat for heating greenhouses. Those greenhouses produce 10% of the UK's tomatoes, so they're quite big greenhouses. In terms of mitigation, there are also some really big challenges still out there for us as an industry, particularly in terms of process emissions.
But I'm pleased to say that in the last year we've successfully piloted methane recovery technology downstream of a digester that we're now looking to deploy at scale on a number of sites. We're also testing an innovative artificial intelligence system to control our wastewater treatment works in a way that will reduce the risk of nitrous oxide generation.
We have added a vacuum system to the storage tank. This solution provides a 5% increase in our biogas production and thus reduce emissions of methane. The increase in biogas is partly achieved by pumping the ventilation air into the biogas system. The other part of the increase is achieved using the vacuum system. The lower pressure releases more methane from the sludge, just like popping a bottle of champagne.
We're seeing more and more installations of monitoring for process emissions at facility level. Data modelling approaches, hybrid modelling, process modelling, these aren't yet available for us to pick up and use, and we need to be careful when we are, for example, thinking about things like process modelling of nitrous oxide and considering incorporating this into digital twins. A really emerging, exciting area. Lots of discussion going on, and it's really important that we come together to discuss the evidence base.
We're also putting a lot of focus into reducing emissions from our investment programme.
We engaged with a whole host of different stakeholders, and we were able to really delve into this area of culture and behaviours. I guess the overall message came through was, let's just make some progress on this. With progress, not perfection.
To reduce these emissions, in the past year we have trialled innovative low-carbon solutions for our site setups, compounds and welfare facilities, including the trial of HVO fuels, the use of solar-powered power pods for site welfare facilities.
Digging up the road uses a huge amount of carbon and has a really large carbon footprint.
Excavating a small excavation using long-handled tools, using suction excavators, we can improve the timeline of the job, but also getting the job done safer, quicker, and with a reduced carbon footprint.
We are driving the increase of recycled and low-carbon materials in construction, for example, by using crushed glass sand as embedment material for sewers.
In this case, we did a life cycle assessment comparing a tank made of steel versus concrete. It is the great opportunities to recycle the steel that particularly favor the steel solution.
So this is not a handout, it's a financially sustainable business model.
A result of the electrification of our fleet, company vehicles are now no longer our largest emitter.
Having some sort of setup with maybe a tripod or something on the head and being able to show a live feed straight to that person on Teams at home.
It's brilliant to be able to bring in experts as well, I think, from anywhere across the world.
Of course, we know that we've got some emissions that will be difficult to reduce, and they're exploring carbon capture. We've planted our first 100 hectares of new woodland.
We need to think about what is the change that we're trying to create. It's not just simply bring in an innovation and hope that it is successful or that it takes off or achieves the purpose it's trying to create. We're talking about systemic change. That's what we're trying to achieve.
I installed 2 additional water butts, so I now have the ability for 600 litres of rainwater.
And we've worked at a very human level, with those customers identified as our highest consumers of water.
Mandatory water efficiency labelling in the UK.
And nowadays you can't buy a house that doesn't have a very high standard in terms of cavity wall insulation. So why can't we do the same in terms of water efficiency?
In terms of positive tipping points, it is difficult to be definitive, but we are seeing a lot of potential from a governance perspective.
Systems that will give us much more flexibility to deal with really the changes in climate that we anticipate, and it'll enable us to supply water in lots of different ways.
The proliferation of private sector organizations developing knowledge and technological innovations and tools. For example, the concept of follow the water through recent technological advances in real-time monitoring of flows using Earth observation tools.
Trees can provide so many benefits.
But also thinking about how you can combine a reservoir with flood defence and think about storing water, but also using that storage to mitigate flood risk. But also what else that can do in terms of opportunities to sequester carbon, particularly in peat, and opportunities to restore nature.
Developing a water management strategy or plan can be an opportunity to include nature-based solutions.
Flood early warning systems.
So on the subject of finance, twice already now I've mentioned the trial reservoir.
First, we have in place a community of practice which provides a place for technical knowledge exchange among experts and utilities.
All the things that we can do to influence the political environment that are important.
I've never seen as much collaboration as I've seen right now in the water industry.
That's us. We're going to wrap up. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you again.
I mean, wasn't that incredible? It was sort of relentless, wasn't it? This tidal wave of engagement and stories which are uplifting and promising. And with so many people doing so much good work, I'm sure we're going to hit a few good positive tipping points across the water sector. Now, a team of volunteer editors have produced a 40-page summary of the discussion, and you can read the report, watch the show, and much more on the webpage. What we really need you to do, however, is to take the survey that's going to shape the water climate discussion that will happen at COP28 next year. We're also setting up a number of specialist roundtable discussions which will drill into some of the tougher areas of the water climate action. Now you can express your interest in the survey at this web link, which I will also circulate when I send round the link after these broadcasts.